Hey guys, it's John from the Caravan. Today we are making nachos caravan style. You guys ready? Let's go. All right, word of the day, ladies and gentlemen, is nachos. There are so many different ways to make nachos. You can pile them full of meat and cheese, cook them up, make them all melty and yummy. You can put a bunch of fresh stuff on them, sit down in front of your favorite sporting event. I know you've had nachos before, and I know you know what you like on your nachos. Today, we're going to show you how to make a simple after-school snack that any chef of the age of 12 and up could make, okay? Now, couple things you need to know before we get started here. We're going to be using a couple different types of knives today. You should use whatever knife your skill set represents. Meaning, if you're a younger chef and your parents only let you use a steak knife, that's all you should use, okay? If you're an older chef and your parents trust you with maybe one of the bigger knives, then use what you feel comfortable with and what your parents say is okay. We'll be using a santoku blade today. Curved edge right there. You can notice that the blade is straight as opposed to our next knife, which is a paring knife, a smaller knife used for light prep work in a kitchen. And you can notice that the blade has these little teeth on it. It's called a serrated blade. Most of your steak knives have these serrated blades on them. We'll be using two different knives for two different purposes today. However, if you only have one of these knives, it's totally fine. Use what you have and what you feel comfortable with, all right? Let's jump into the ingredients. First ingredient today, green onion. Yep, doesn't look at all like an onion as we think of, but it does have a light, mellow onion flavor, and you don't have to cook it to kind of mellow it out a little bit. Now, one thing you need to know about this green onion, you need to wash these as you need to wash all produce. And when you wash it, make sure you get inside the tube and wash that out too, because it is actually hollow right there. Another thing you need to know about this green onion, it can be used in a lot of different applications. We're actually not going to be heating up these nachos today. However, if you have a recipe that requires green onion, a heated dish, then you probably want to use it closer to the root. See how it goes from dark green and it gets lighter until it's completely white here at the root? The closer you get to the root, the more intense flavor you're going to have. So if you're cooking with this, a heated cooked dish, then you're going to want to use the stuff that's closer to the root. The bright greens to white stuff right here. As it gets darker right there, this is used for garnish or putting on top of stuff. We're actually going to use the entire thing today, but normally on a nacho that you'd buy, you'd probably only see this part used right here. First thing you want to do is cut the tips off. I'm going to use my straight blade, my santoku here, to just cut those tips off. Usually they're brown, maybe they've kind of been jostled around at the grocery store or on the delivery truck or whatever. Let's just get rid of those, okay? We will actually cut the root off there too, but we won't get there quite yet. So, one thing you need to know about these is there's one technique that's the best one to use, okay? And that technique is called the claw technique, all right? So, claw technique is when I take my hands and I curl them back, making that's right, claw. Now, why would we use a claw technique as opposed to using our fingers when we chop? Well, the fingertips are very bleedable as opposed to your knuckles. If I were to graze my knuckles or graze my fingertips, which one do you think would bleed more? You're correct. It's going to be the fingertips. Another reason that we want to use that claw technique is not only to protect our very bleedable fingertips, it's to force us to slow down while we're chopping. And after you've made 100 different nachos, you might just be on autopilot, and that's when you make mistakes in the kitchens, ladies and gentlemen, okay? So we're going to curl our fingers back and use the claw technique to chop these into tiny little rings. You really want to go as thin as you can. You don't want a huge mouthful of the green onion. You just want it to be another ingredient that kind of does a nice dance with all the other ones in our beautiful nacho that we're going to make. So I'm just coming down here, making my way to the whites. You can stop at the green if you want. I recommend you at least try the whites one time. just so you can see how intense the flavor is. Okay, notice how I use my knife to gather up the ingredients, but I make sure that I'm never running my knife across my hands, okay? And my knife has contact with the cutting board the entire time that I am doing this. Do what you feel comfortable with, though. If you want to gather it with your hands, I completely understand. Okay, first ingredient down, ladies and gentlemen. Let's move on to our next ingredient, the tomato. As everyone knows, tomato is a fruit masquerading as a vegetable. It's actually really sweet, but very seldom do you see it in sweet applications. Usually you see it in savory applications. You see it in tomato sauces, on pizzas, in ketchup. Today we're going to chop this thing up and we're going to throw it on our nachos. Time for knife 2, the serrated blade with the teeth. You know, the outside of this tomato is nice and smooth and kind of slippery. Really easy for a young chef to slip when he's trying to cut into the tomato. So we're actually going to use this serrated blade today on the tomato so that we can go into it. Remember that first technique we learned? The claw technique. That's right. We're going to curl our fingers back here, putting the stem in front, and we're just going to cut that stem off. If you want to be more frugal with it, you can kind of cut the stem out if you'd like. I could even put this on the table, cut around it to give every last little bit of tomato if I wanted to. I'm not actually going to do that today. Now inside, you'll notice that there are seeds in pretty much every tomato. You can take those seeds out if you want a cleaner looking tomato. You can keep them in there if you want all that gummy, yummy juiciness. Now this is a Roma tomato. Any tomato that you have at home, you have in your garden, your mom and dad get from the grocery store is going to be okay. However, we are going to learn a brand new technique, and it is called the bridge technique, okay? The bridge technique and the claw techniques are the first two techniques that we teach our young chefs in our cooking classes, in our interactive chef battles, and all of the programming that we do, okay? Bridge technique, you take your thumb and your pointer finger, and you pinch your food like you might pinch your bigger or little brother when they're being a little mean. Pinch your food very gently, and look what we're making here. A bridge, forming a bridge right there. These two fingers are holding whatever you're cutting in place, so you can take your knife and you can go underneath the bridge. Now I know it seems counterintuitive to take the knife towards your hand. Be careful, young chefs, to go underneath the bridge, cut into the food, and now notice how the tip of the knife is making contact with the cutting board. It's going to stay in contact with the cutting board through this entire cut, okay? I'm going to, holding it in place with my thumb and my pointer finger, drag the knife through, all right? Creating two sides. I'm going to do that again to cut this up a little bit more. Now, a common mistake we see our young chefs make when we throw a serrated knife into their hand, and we do that a lot in our interactive cooking classes, is they really try to just push down. They don't really use the entire blade. You should really use the entire blade, and you should let the blade do the work. If you're making long cuts through using the every single tooth on that blade, you shouldn't have to push too hard, ladies and gentlemen, okay? Now, I'm going to do a modified version of my claw technique where I use my thumb and my pinky to actually pinch the food together, much like that technique we just learned called the bridge technique. See how I'm kind of making the bridge? Now I'm taking the claw and holding it all in place so that I can use the entire knife to cut through my food easily, like cutting through butter. I can make these as big or as small as I want. I'm going to go pretty small today. And I'm actually going to throw these in with our green onions here. Share the space. First two ingredients in our awesome nachos down. All right, while we're cutting things, let's move on to our friend, the avocado here. Perhaps you've encountered the avocado at maybe a restaurant or maybe on Taco Tuesday or something like that. It's going to be fantastic on our nachos today. But as we showed in our smoothie video, there's a little bit of technique that you need to know. I'm going to go back to the straight blade for this. However, I really could use this serrated blade if I wanted to, okay? I'm going to take it and I'm going to gently slice into the avocado. Now, instead of trying to move the knife around the avocado, I'm just going to turn the avocado and keep the knife in place. Give it a gentle twist. And let's see what's inside this avocado. Oh my goodness! Perfect! Beautiful! Green! It's so beautiful! And a massive seed in the middle right there. I'm going to take my santoku knife, gently tap that seed, turn it to the side, and it comes right out. Now, if I didn't feel comfortable doing that, I could take a spoon and dig that seed out. You might lose a little avocado. Better than hurting yourself. Instead of grabbing this, I'm going to come from behind here and gently pinch the seed off. And we're done. Now, I could just scoop this out and put it right in there, but then I'd have a big lump of avocado. Who has ever eaten nachos and had just a massive lump of avocado on one chip? No one ever has. So, we're actually going to chop this up inside. I'm going to take my knife here, and I'm going to do what's called scoring. Scoring is when you cut, but you don't cut all the way through, basically creating guidelines. So notice how I'm actually cutting, but I'm not actually going through the skin. I'm cutting just all that delicious meat. I'm going to go sideways here, make a little crosshatch pattern. Now, when I take a spoon, it all just comes right out. Avocados, great source of creaminess, a great source of healthy fat. Beautiful. First three ingredients: amazing green onion, delicious, juicy tomato, smooth, fatty, decadent avocado. Okay, our next ingredient is an herb called cilantro, but it comes from a plant that makes an herb and a spice. Now, herbs are the leaves of plants, and spices are the roots, the bark, the stem, the seed, all the other parts of it. So the leaves of the cilantro plant are these, but the actual seeds are coriander, two completely one herb and one spice in the same plant, and they taste completely different. My favorite thing is to toast that coriander, and it kind of smells like Fruit Loops. Pretty crazy, but that's for another lesson. This cilantro is not going to have a lot of flavor, but it's going to have a lot of smoothness, a lot of cool, refreshing texture, and it's going to be awesome. I'm going to go back to my straight blade here, my santoku, and I'm going to do what's called the rock chop, okay? Where I chop back and forth, rocking it, okay? Now let me just cut off a little bit here. Put two fingers right on top of the knife. Make sure that the tip is always in contact with the cutting board, and just run it back and forth a couple times through my cilantro. I'm not looking to cut this up a whole bunch, because the more edges that we make, the browner it's going to be. I just want to chop it up a little bit. Now, if I didn't feel comfortable rocking back and forth on this, I could just use my claw technique very loosely. I could even just pick these stems off and throw them right in there. This is just going to give a lot of color contrast, and like I said, a lot of smoothness and texture to our nachos. Delicious. I can smell that cilantro in the air. Chef Chuck's behind the camera today. Chef Chuck, can you smell all that? Absolutely. It smells delicious. In my opinion, it's not nachos unless we have a little bit of acidity, a little bit of citrus. That's right, ladies and gentlemen, it's lime. I want to get as much as I can out of this lime, and when you want to get as much juice as you can out of any piece of citrus, you're going to need to separate the pulp, the inside, from the membrane, the outside. And I'm going to do that by rolling it back and forth. Feels pretty tight. I can feel it loosening as I roll back and forth, putting one hand on top of the other and just gently rocking back and forth. Ooh, it feels nice and loose right now. I also want a little bit more texture as opposed to just that limey flavor. So I'm actually going to pull out what's called a zester here, okay? And I'm going to take a little bit of that skin off. Delicious. You may be thinking, what are you doing? Taking the skin off? You don't eat the skin of citrus? You know what? It's that white, pithy part that's actually bitter and undesirable. If we had a tool that could separate the colorful outside of the citrus from the white, pithy underbelly, then we would be left with something called zest, ladies and gentlemen. That's what it looks like. Concentrated flavor of whatever citrus you are using. Beautiful flavor blast. Awesome color right there. It's called zest, and it's fantastic. I'm just going to sneak it right into the corner of this cilantro bowl. Delicious. And then I'm going to switch knives over to my serrated blade right here, and I'm going to use the, what's it called? Bridge technique to hold this in place while I drag my serrated knife through. Ooh, the juice is just squeezing out. There's juice all over my cutting board because I rolled it till it's awesome, juicy perfection. And I'm going to put this aside. I'm not going to do anything else with it except just squeeze this all over my nachos for a little bit of acidity, a little bit of bite at the very end. Okay, wrapping up the cutting portion of these nachos, we have corn on the cob here, ladies and gentlemen. Now, of course, you could get the canned corn. You could open it. You could drain it. You can use that. A lot of times, corn is plentiful in the summertime. Cheap deal. And so it's a great alternative to using that stuff in a can that's just been kind of sitting in there for a really long time. Not a whole lot of nutrients in that. Honestly, not a whole lot of nutrients in general in the corn, but it's a great filler. Fills up your belly. Looks great on that nacho. And I personally love the flavor. So I have an enormous cutting bowl, or a mixing bowl rather, that I'm going to put this inside. And this is how I'm going to separate the kernels from the cob here. I'm going to put it into this mixing bowl. Now, why on earth am I cutting it inside a mixing bowl when I have a perfectly good cutting board right there? You know what these little kernels are going to do? As soon as I start to cut them off, they're going to start to fly everywhere. This is a little restaurant tip. This is how they do it in restaurants. And I'm actually going to start halfway down. I'm not going to try to cut the entire thing. It's a little bit dangerous. I'm going to start halfway down and just take all those beautiful little kernels right off. Using my santoku blade for this. Again, of course you could use the serrated if that's all you have. I prefer the santoku for this. Doesn't take a lot of corn. You could be more meticulous if you wanted to. You hear that clanging? That's my knife hitting the mixing bowl. That's no bueno, ladies and gentlemen. You want to avoid that if you can. That's a pretty hobbled job right there. I could definitely do a better job if I wanted to, but you know what? Nachos are fun food. There's really no rules with these nachos. We can do whatever we want. I say that's plenty of corn, and that's a fine job, and that's what goes, ladies and gentlemen. All right, moving right along. Our next ingredient, black beans. Frijoles negros is how they say it in Espanol. Great alternative to meat. Excellent source of protein. Delicious, nutritious. Now, this is a can. There's no pull top here, so we're going to need to use one of these amazing contraptions right here. What is it? One of those old phones that your parents used to use? No, it's a can opener, ladies and gentlemen. Maybe you've used one of these before. Hopefully you have. If you haven't, don't worry, we got you. Okay, so basically we have these two wheels right here that are kind of like wheel-like knives. They bite into the edge of the can. Then you turn this thing right here, and the can magically opens. It slides around the outside and cuts it, okay? So you want to get it in there, make sure you're on the edge, and push down. Do you hear a click or something like that? Every single can opener is different. That's how this can opener works, which is a pretty universal can opener, but your can opener at home probably looks different. Maybe it works different. Definitely ask your parents to help you out and figure out how to use this thing if you don't know, okay? All right, so now I'm gently going to turn it clockwise, and you'll notice that the tip is coming right off there. Go all the way around. There we go. Sometimes it gets stuck in there. Grab yourself a utensil to pry it out. Yep. Some can openers work better than others. This one works okay. I'm going to pry it up just a little bit. You really want to be careful because this edge is now super duper sharp and it's very easy to cut yourself on that. So please be careful with that can opener edge right there, okay? All right, now black beans will pretty much always come in some kind of liquid. Now I could dump these into a colander, rinse them off, and drain them if I plan on using all of the black beans. If I'm at home after school making a little personal batch of nachos, I don't want to dump all this out. Because what's going to happen is I'm going to drain these out, get beautiful black beans, I'm going to stick them into a container, throw them into the fridge, and tomorrow I'm going to open it up to make some more nachos, pull those black beans out, and they are going to smell gross, and I'm never going to want black beans again. You really only want to drain what you're using. If you're using a whole can, drain the whole can. If you're making a little tiny batch of nachos, grab yourself a little spoon with a slot in it. You could even just grab a spoon and do it a little bit yourself if you wanted to. Drain what you're using. Keep the rest in the liquid. That's our little life hack right there. Now, I'm not going to put the entire can into the fridge. I'm going to find some other kind of container, but when I do, I'm going to dump all of this plus the liquid in that container, and you know what? It's going to keep for a lot longer, couple days in there before it starts to get stinky, okay? That is plenty of black beans for what we need right there, and they're a little liquidy, but they can drain. I could drain them even more if I wanted to. Again, they're nachos though. I don't really care. I'm kind of hungry. I'm going to drain them just enough to throw them on my nachos and make them taste awesome. All right. Moving right along, the next thing we're going to need is a little bit of cheese. Now I have two different types of cheese today, and why not do them both, okay? We have a mild cheddar cheese right here, and we have a Monterey Jack cheese right here. One is yellow, one is white. Okay, using my serrated knife here, I'm going to cut into this. And there we go, that's it. I'm just going to stick that on top of my nacho, right? Wrong. We're going to need to shred this. So what are we going to use? We're going to use the older cousin to the zester. Ladies and gentlemen, it's the grater. A lot of people call this a cheese grater because most people use it for this purpose. Taking a big block of cheese and shredding it into tiny pieces here, okay? We have big holes on one side, small holes on the other. Big holes make big shreds. Small holes make small shreds. We're going big shreds today, and I would recommend that for your nachos. Now I'm going to take it, and I'm just going to drag it down the side of this grater right here. You'll notice as you're doing it, you'll start to develop a little point there. Ow! Oh! Just kidding. Not that sharp. I'm going to make sure that that point is always in contact with the grater. As I create new points, I'm going to keep turning it around. Make sure you keep your hands far enough back because it'll grate your hands too, depending on how sharp your grater is. You might end up with a little bit of skin in your nachos, and that's no bueno, ladies and gentlemen. All right, I'm just going to cut a little bit since I'm using two different cheeses, and voila! Look at all that beautiful cheese right there. Delicious. Now, cheese is not mandatory for nachos. Most people like to put cheese on their nachos. Not everybody can have cheese, though. Some people are lactose intolerant. Fear not. You do not have to have cheese on nachos for them to be delicious. However, today, we are going to put some cheese on these nachos. That was the cheddar cheese. Here's the Monterey Jack. Smooth and creamy. The cheddar is going to have a little bit more sharpness to it. Both of these are going to balance each other out and make a fantastic set of nachos. All right, same thing. Make sure I have my hand on top of my grater here. Starting at the top, I'm going to drag it all the way down. As I create points, ow! Still joking. I'm going to turn that point and make sure that I am always keeping the point towards the grater and keeping my fingers nice and far away. There we go. Reaching my hand in there to make sure I get all the cheese that may be stuck in there. Never going to push my hand straight down there. Here's another little life hack. You could throw this thing into the sink and let it sit for a couple days, and it's going to be really hard to clean. What I recommend is that you clean this pretty much immediately, ladies and gentlemen. Stick this under the sink, go back and forth, okay? You can start from the bottom and go the opposite way, and you won't shred your fingers. This cheese is going to come off a lot easier when you've just used it, or maybe 10, 20 minutes afterwards. Hour, 2 hour, 3 hour, couple days after, it's going to be tough to get that off. This cheese is going to go right next to our mild cheddar cheese. And there we go. Beautiful. We got the yellow, we got the white, got a little bit of everything for these nachos today. Okay, we are wrapping up our ingredients. Oh my goodness, it feels like we just started. The last thing that we're going to put on these nachos is a little bit of lettuce. Any lettuce will do. This happens to be Boston bib lettuce. I don't know if you're going to see that around in the grocery stores very much. Romaine is great. Kale is fantastic. Even some iceberg is going to be good. Now, I could chop this up, but I have the original tools, my hands, and they work just fine for taking leaves of this lettuce off right here and throwing it in. That's it. All that's left to do is to put all these ingredients on the table and assemble our masterpiece. All right, it's time for the final phase in our nacho making, the plating, ladies and gentlemen. I have this nice plank right here. Obviously, any plate is going to be fine. Even a bowl for your nachos is going to be great here, okay? We're thinking outside the box with these nachos. We're thinking delicious easy, and nutritious. And you know what? Zero heat with our nachos. I know a lot of people like to heat them up, melt that cheese, yummy, ooey gooey. You're more than welcome to do that with your microwave, your toaster oven, whatever you have that your parents say is okay. Absolutely do that. If you are going to heat these up, I recommend you put a bunch of nachos on a plate. Next thing you do is put some cheese on there. Beautiful. Don't go too much. We're looking for a mountain of crunch here, right? Soggy nachos equal not so, okay? And the more ingredients you put on there, the soggier it's going to be. You want these ingredients to kind of interact with the tortilla chips. Get the crunchy, get the salty from there, so you get the whole experience, okay? And I like to talk about chip real estate in my high school cooking classes. Think about it. You want a little bit of every ingredient on this chip, okay? So if you have huge chunks of food on here, how much real estate is it taking up on that chip? Are you going to have a representation of everything on each bite? Probably not. In a perfect world, you would. But you want everything to be the size to where you conceivably could have a little bit of everything on each chip, okay? So we're going to put a little bit of cheese on here. Now, if you're heating this up in the microwave, I would go ahead and throw it in now, okay? Throw it in for about 10-15 seconds just to get the cheese started. Like I said, we're skipping all that. We love our ingredients raw so we can get all of the nutritional benefit from it, okay? I'm going to jump in with some black beans next. There's really no rules at this point. You put these ingredients on as you see fit. Oh, beautiful. Every black bean goes on top there. Delicious. No black beans left behind. Here we're going to put some corn on next. La-di-da-di. Okay, I'm going to be very meticulous with my avocado. It's kind of big. If you think about chip real estate, this stuff is taking up a lot of chip space. But oh, is it going to be worth it? So delicious. Now the chips I'm using today are kind of small. The bigger chips you have, obviously, the more real estate you have for ingredients. Wipe that delicious avocado off my hands real quick. Okay, next I'm going tomatoes. Just look at all the different colors that we have right here. We like to say in our programs that you eat with your eyes before you eat with your mouth. Now what does that mean? Does that mean my eye is literally going to open up with its own little mouth and eat the ingredients? Of course not. It means that you decide how you feel about a dish before it reaches your mouth based on the way it looks, whether you like that or not. And hopefully the taste and the flavor informs your feelings about it. We can't take that chance though. We want it to look good so that you know it will taste good. And color contrast is one of the ways that we chefs make sure that you like the food that we're eating before it even reaches your mouth. Oh my goodness, look at this. Delicioso. Okay. Now, I'm going to save my green onions right there. I'm actually going to put just a little bit of lettuce on here. You can see that we're getting farther and farther away from the nachos. There's a couple different philosophies, schools of thought, if you will, on nacho building. Some people like to layer ingredients, pile more nachos, layer ingredients, pile more nachos, so that you have kind of like an underbelly, like a couple different floors to your nachos. Some people just like to have a bunch of chips and a bunch of stuff on top. That's what we're going for today. You know what? I just do what I'm feeling that day, okay? It changes day by day, and it should for you. Don't take this too seriously. It's nachos. It's a delicious treat, all right? A little bit of cilantro. La-di-da-di-da. I'm going to hold this about 6 inches above so that when I let it go, it kind of separates. Remember all that lime? Ooh, let's squeeze a little bit of this on top. Oh, goodness gracious. And that lime zest, I'm going to hold this a little bit more than 6 inches. I'm going to want to rub it back and forth with my thumbs and fingers right there so that it separates as it falls. And then the last ingredient, a little bit of green onion. Put my hand down here so it doesn't cascade off of this mountain that we're building here. Last thing I like to put on mine, a little more cheese, ladies and gentlemen. What can I say? I'm a cheesehead. Just a little bit on top right there. And there it is. You see nachos. We here at the Caravan like to call it fun nachos because it's all fun. It's all easy. There's no stress here. If you're a young chef looking to get your foot in the door to opening your own meals, this is a great place to start. Did you see all the different tools that we had to use to do this with? Now, if I was making nachos every day for myself after school, I'd have this stuff down to a science. You know, we used one green onion tube, but you don't just buy one green onion tube from the grocery store. You buy many of them. That's many plates of nachos right there. We used one spoonful of black beans in here. We used a tiny bit of avocado. We can make many more batches of nachos for this. Or if I have a bunch of my friends over, I could expand this and use way more ingredients and make nachos for even 10 people if I wanted to. Check out the finished result right there. Fun nachos, ladies and gentlemen. A mountain of crunch. Chef Chuck's hungry. Oh, Chef Chuck, I don't know if I want to share this with you. You know what? Nachos are for sharing. Chef Chuck, take the first bite. Let's see if he can do it without dismantling the entire thing. He doesn't even know where to start. Oh, there it is. Oh, yum. Tum. I'm just going to kind of go to this side right here. Grab some right here. Fork some ingredients on right there. Make sure it has a little bit of everything that I like. Down the hatch. Let's see how it tastes. First thing that hits my mouth, the crunchiness of the tortilla. Then I get the smoothness of the cheese cut with the roughage that is the lettuce right there, the acidity from the lime, the yumminess of the corn, the meatiness of the black beans right there, the onion and of the green onion and the sweetness from the tomatoes, all in my mouth, all at once. So delicious, ladies and gentlemen. I can't wait for you to make your own nachos at home. And when you do, make sure you share your recipes with us. CookingCaravan@gmail.com or hit up our website, wearethecaravan.com. Guys, thanks for sticking around, making some awesome fun nachos with us. Go forth and conquer, and we will see you next time.